Okay, the first step when you're setting out a vineyard is to set that first reference stake for what we call the macro grid. So in this instance, we're going to make a 30-foot headland, which is a pretty standard length for a headland, 30 to 50 feet, depending on the equipment that you're using. So in this case, we're going to measure 30 feet off the back of this road, because we're going to use the road also to turn in, 30 feet, and then we're going to place our first stake, and that's going to be where our first row is. And so you can see here, she's placed the stake, and now she's going to pound it in the ground. Behind her, you can see this PVC pipe. That's going to the back of this road. And that PVC pipe, that's 30 feet of PVC, so that we can accurately measure out the headland. Now the next step is to set the tripod up over the first stake. This is actually the most tedious and time-consuming process of setting up transits. So you go ahead, you extend the legs out and up, and then you want to extend it so that the base of the platform here is about to the bottom of your chin, so that when you're looking through the transit, you don't have to bend down all that much. You can just stand and look through it. So there you go. You lock the legs in. Eyeball it so that the platform is level. And that's going to make it much easier when you have to level the transit. And then you're going to look through the screw that you use to screw on the transit to that platform, and you're going to try to get it right over the reference stake. You're also going to hang that plumb bob, and that's what you can see there dangling from the bottom of the platform. And that plumb bob is going to help you get it right over the stake. So you want that plumb bob, when it's stationary, to be directly over the middle of that stake, so that you know that when you put the transit on, you're shooting right over that reference stake. So this is something that you will get better at over time. The more that you work with the transit, and you'll get much faster at doing this. So now you can see she's gotten the plumb bob so that it's directly over the stake. So this tripod is perfectly set up. And now what you're going to do is you want to stomp in the legs so that the tripod is secured in the ground. You'll see her do this after she's put the transit on, which is also fine. So again, now you're going to attach that transit and screw it on so that it's finger tight. You don't need to get it really hard. And now you're going to see she's going to secure the tripod. And just make sure you get these feet into the ground. And also make sure that it doesn't move, so that you're no longer off that center point. Your transit's still just above it. Now at this point, we're going to level the transit, and this can be a little bit confusing the first time you do it as well. So what you're going to do, in this case, we have a transit with 3 screws. That's kind of the most common setup you'll see. And what you're going to do is turn this transit so that it's going parallel to these 2 screws here, A and B. And then you're going to set the vernier scale that's around the transit. You're going to set it to 0 at this point. Okay? And then you're going to use screws A and B here, and you're going to screw them in and out in opposite directions. So you can see in this case, we're going to screw the A screw in a clockwise direction and the B screw in a counterclockwise direction. And you'll do this until the bubble here lines up. So you'll go in and out and in and out until you figure out which direction you need to go to get this bubble in the middle. So here you can see she's setting that vernier scale to 0. And you can see she's turning the screws in opposite directions until the bubble here, and you can see it's moving this direction. That bubble is now directly in the center. Now she's turning it 90 degrees. So now the direction's going this way towards screw C, and we're at 90 degrees. And we're just going to use screw C to level it. So now you can see she's only working with one screw, and the bubble's here. And it's going to, as she continues to work with that screw, it's going to move to the center. So here you can see now it's going to the center. And there we go. Now we're perfectly level in that orientation. Now you're going to want to turn it in 360 degrees and just make sure you're totally level all the way around. And there you can see the bubble's not moving. It's perfect. So now you're going to want to shoot the transit down your first row. So in this case, we want north-south rows. We're going to go about 180 degrees north-south. And so there you can see this is exactly how it is in this field. You're shooting a north-south, and then we're going to mark the end of this row here. So here you can see she's unlatching it, the transit, so that she can point it downwards. And then you walk out into the field. And in this case, this transit can shoot accurately up to 200 feet. So what we might do in a real-world situation is have someone walk out with a wheel here that's measuring distance, walk out maybe 100 feet, and then place a stake, and then walk out another 100 feet and place a stake out there, and then continue the process. So in this case, we're just going to walk out, and we're just going to place the one stake for the sake of this video. And also, this would typically be done in a prepared field without grass. So now just have the person out in the field with maybe a piece of wood or this measuring stick that comes with the transit kits, and then have your person on the transit looking so that you're shooting towards the bottom of this measuring stick here and directing the person out in the field where to place it. And then your person in the field will place the stake in the ground directly in the center of that measuring stick and pound the reference stake into the ground. And remember to check through the transit as well and make sure that the reticle is centered on this reference stake. Now you're going to turn the transit 90 degrees and shoot. Now we're shooting across the rows. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So here you can see we're shooting, so the rows are going to go this direction. So now we're shooting across the rows, and we're going to put a reference stake out there at point C. So again, you repeat what you just did, and you place the reference stake at point C in this case. And again, making sure that that reference stake is centered in that reticle. Now we're going to move our tripod from here, from point A to point B, because we want to now shoot a parallel line, so BD being parallel to AC. So just go ahead and pick your tripod up and place it over the point down at the end of the row. And again, you're going to have to level. You're going to have to make sure that the tripod is directly over the stake using the plumb bob, and then also level the transit as you've done previously. Now you want to shoot, once you've had the transit leveled, you want to shoot from point B to point A back down the row, and that's going to be your reference line. And you're going to set the vernier scale to 0. So here you can see now she's unlocking it, and she's going to shoot directly back to that reference stake, so that you're centered on the stake. And once you have it centered, you're going to set your vernier scale to 0. And now you're going to turn the transit 90 degrees so that you're shooting there to point D in this diagram, so that we're creating now 2 parallel lines. So there you can see it's 0 degrees, or it's 90 degrees rather. And then again, position, have someone go out, and you're going to put that stake in the ground and mark that point. In this case, it's point D. Now we're going to tie guide string from point A to C. The method that we're going to use to start marking out rows and plant spaces is just one method that you can use. There's a bunch of different methods. You can just use marked rope. If you use marked rope, you need to make sure that you're pulling it super tight and checking to make sure that it's tight enough so that the spacing is correct. With rope, you can have a lot of slack and the spacing can get off. You can also use cable rope, which is fine. In this case, what we're going to do is we're tying guide string from point to point, and then we're going to use PVC pipe that's been sort of glued together and then marked with the row spacing or the plant spacing. And the reason we're using PVC pipe is there is no stretching. When we lay it down on the ground, we know that the spacing is correct. So here you can see the string that we're using, and then we're just putting it through these reference stakes and then tying them off. But making sure that that string is tight and straight. Now we're going to go ahead and mark out the row spacing. And like I said, we're using this PVC pipe here. And in this case, we are doing 8-foot row spacing. And so on the pipe, you can see we've put some black electrical tape every 8 feet. Now we're going to do the same thing on the parallel line across the field. So you can see here B to D. So now we're going to mark out the row spacing on that end. Now we're going to tie the guide strings from one stake at the end of the field to the other stake. In this case, what we're actually using, rather than tying it, because we're using popsicle sticks for the sake of this demonstration, we're not going to tie it to the popsicle sticks. We're tying them to little U stakes that we just stake into the ground. Normally what we would be using instead of popsicle sticks would just be pencil rod. And we could just tie it to the pencil rod. And we wouldn't necessarily tie guide string for every single row. We maybe do 2 rows at a time and then switch over to the next 2 rows. So here you can see we're tying it to this U stake that's in the ground next to the popsicle stick marker that we're using. And then we go ahead and just run that guide string out to the stake that's across the field. And now we just tie that guide string off to the stake and make sure that it's nice and tight and straight. Now we're going to go ahead and stake out those plant spaces. Again, it's the same way that we did before. We were staking out row spaces. Now we're just doing a different spacing. So in this case, we're doing 4 feet between each plant. And also you want to periodically check the grid. So get into the middle of the planting, or get in the middle of the grid, and stand over one of the points and make sure that your lines are straight, and that you also, so not only you have a straight rows north and south, but also that you have a nice 45-degree angle and that they're straight in the 45 as well. So here you can see this is the fully laid out plot, and we've gone ahead and colored the popsicle sticks here with some orange paint so that you can clearly see this very perfectly laid out grid, 8x4 grid.